By the time the state investigator finished reading out loud, the room was so quiet you could hear the HOA president's acrylic nails tapping the table. She held up a familiar photocopy and said in a measured tone, "This so-called fence color change request form illegally bundled consent for accelerated foreclosure, power of attorney, and waiver of due process." She turned it around so the packed clubhouse could see. I stood at the back of the room, leaning against the wall in jeans and a plain black t-shirt, arms crossed. "That's my signature," I said. "Right there. Signed 9 years ago. I thought I was just repainting my fence." All eyes swung from the paper to Denise Caro, president of the Cedar Grove HOA, who suddenly looked like she had swallowed a whole ice cube. The investigator continued with a tone that cut through the silence. "Mr. Hale's home was taken using this document, along with at least 12 others." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Denise tried to smile and said with forced brightness, "This is all just a misunderstanding of our standard forms." Behind her, the giant HOA logo hung on the wall. Someone had taped a sticky note over it. In neat handwriting, it said, "Under new investigation." 9 years earlier, I just wanted a normal life. I was a network engineer, quiet, methodical, happiest when things were stable and boring. When I bought a small 3-bedroom place in Cedar Grove, I thought I had found stability. Cul-de-sac, trees, a walking trail, and a brochure that said, "Strong community values," in suspiciously large font. The brochure did not mention Denise Caro. Denise was the kind of woman who turned a volunteer HOA position into a full-time dictatorship. Early 50s, aggressively blonde, always in a blazer like she was auditioning for suburban Shark Tank. She loved 3 things: saying, "Per the CC and RS," sending emails with red text, and being copied on everything. I was not a complainer. I paid dues on time, kept my lawn neat, waved politely. My wildest rebellion was an old wood fence around my backyard that had faded to a sad, patchy brown. One spring, I decided to repaint it. I even tried to be proactive. I emailed the HOA to ask if they had a preferred color. Denise responded within 9 minutes. The email said, "Dear Mr. Hale, we do require approval. Please sign the attached fence color change request form and return." Quick and easy. She added her title at the bottom with obvious pride, HOA President. Attached was a 1-page document with a cheerful header and small print that looked like legal spaghetti. I skimmed it. Saw, "Fence repaint, no structural change. Agree to follow HOA guidelines." I signed and emailed it back. 2 weeks later, I repainted the fence. Same color, just not depressing anymore. It was the last uncomplicated decision I made as a Cedar Grove homeowner. It started with a letter. Violation notice. Unapproved fence color. You are in breach of Section 7.4b, Fence Aesthetic Uniformity. I stared at the notice, then at my fence, then back at the notice. I emailed Denise. I got approval. See attached form. Denise replied with a tone that came through even in text. The form was denied by the Architectural Committee. You proceeded anyway. You are now subject to fines and legal fees. I checked my inbox. No denial. No follow-up. Nothing. I pointed this out. Denise responded with saccharine firmness. We are not required to individually notify for every decision. Decisions stand. The fines started small. $75. Then $150. Then administrative fees. I appealed. They said my appeal was non-compliant and added a processing assessment. Within 6 months, what should have been a $30 can of fence paint had turned into $3,400 in fines, $650 in legal review fees for an attorney I had never seen, and a lien notice warning me my house could be at risk. I called an actual lawyer. The lawyer laughed sadly. Can they technically do this? Depends on your CC and RS. Can you afford to fight them? I could not. I was already struggling after a layoff and some medical bills. The HOA law firm began sending letters every week, threatening foreclosure for unpaid assessments. I picked up overtime, stopped eating out, tried to catch up. Then my mom got sick. I traveled to help her. Missed a deadline. The HOA moved in for the kill. They held a hearing I could not attend because they scheduled it for 10 a.m. on a weekday. Marked me absent. Declared me non-compliant. 2 months later, I got a certified letter. Foreclosure proceedings initiated for unpaid HOA liens. I called. I begged. I tried to set up a payment plan. Denise said in her bright customer service voice, "We have to be consistent, Mr. Hale. We cannot make exceptions. It would not be fair to the rule-following residents." 9 months after repainting my fence, I stood on the sidewalk holding a cardboard box while investors toured my former living room. I watched some guy in a polo talk casually about flipping it. The house sold at auction for less than I still owed on my original mortgage. And that was that. Or it should have been. Losing the house broke something in me, but it did not break the part of me that liked systems to make sense. I moved into a small rental across town. I rebuilt my savings. I took contract work. At night, unable to sleep, I read HOA law, case studies, civil procedure, real estate foreclosure statutes. I fell down a late-night internet rabbit hole and found forums full of people with the same story. HOA foreclosure over paint color. Lost my home over a mailbox. $500 fine turned into $50,000 judgment. 9 years passed. During those years, Cedar Grove kept operating like nothing was wrong. Under Denise, they foreclosed on more homes, added more rules, and bragged about being a highly compliant community. They also got sloppy. One evening, I was reading a local news article about record HOA foreclosure rates and saw a familiar phrase, fence color change request form. Another HOA across town was using almost identical language. I pulled up my old email archive. Yep. Same header. Same formatting. Different neighborhood. It took me about 6 clicks to trace both forms back to the same small law firm and template service, the one Cedar Grove used. I realized it was not just one petty HOA. It was a whole system. A system that depended on nobody reading the fine print and nobody pushing back. So I started pushing. I sent public records requests. I asked the county for every foreclosure filed under Cedar Grove in the last decade. I cross-referenced case numbers with HOA notices I had saved and online complaints I found. Patterns emerged. Every case used the same form. Every foreclosure came down to wildly inflated fees. Many homeowners never got proper notice. I reached out to a couple of former neighbors I remembered. One of them, now renting an apartment like me, wrote back, "If you are doing what I think you are doing, I am in." The turning point came when a paralegal from the original law firm, burned out and underpaid, responded anonymously to one of my emails. They confirmed what I suspected. The fence color change form was not just about fences. It was a Trojan horse. Buried deep in microscopic text was language that appointed the HOA as the homeowner's agent in property-related legal matters, waived certain notice rights, and allowed expedited lien processing and foreclosure for non-compliance. In English, the paralegal wrote, they use it as implied consent to steamroll anyone they want. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I started assembling a file. I did not come back to Cedar Grove waving pitchforks. I came back with a 3-inch binder, 12 angry former homeowners, and a very interested assistant attorney general. I contacted a consumer protection nonprofit. I sent them everything: copies of the fence color change request form from multiple associations, foreclosure timelines, letters with bogus fees, and that glorious anonymous paralegal email. The nonprofit's lawyer looked at my neat stack of evidence and actually whistled. "You did half my job for me," she said. "You ever consider going to law school?" I replied with a slight smile, thought about it. Settled for being stubborn. They filed complaints with the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, the Real Estate Commission, and the state agency overseeing common interest communities. They did not mention it to the HOA. The state, in turn, quietly requested financials and governing documents from Cedar Grove. And when the HOA's accountant sent those over, a new problem appeared. Legal fees paid out to a company owned by Denise's brother. Consulting fees to a shell LLC that traced back to Denise's home address. Reserve funds mysteriously low, despite constant dues increases. What had started as one bad fence form was now starting to look a lot like organized grift. The power shift crystallized the day Denise got the letter she always feared, Notice of Formal Investigation. It was followed by another letter, Request for Mandatory Board Appearance. She tried to spin it as routine oversight in a community email. I was quietly sitting in my car in the old neighborhood, watching HOA board members filter into the clubhouse, clutching folders and wearing the universal expression of people who have just realized they should have hired a real lawyer 10 years ago. This time, I walked in with the state investigator. Half the room recognized me. The other half would soon know my name. The hearing was supposed to be informational. It turned into a live-action demolition. The state investigator started with the basics, asking in a calm but firm tone, "Your association has foreclosed on 14 homes in 9 years. That is unusually high for a development this size. Can you explain?" Denise tried. She talked about high standards and community values and chronic non-compliance. Then the investigator pulled out a stack of forms. "Is this your fence color change request template?" Denise brightened. "Yes. That is simply our architectural approval form." "Did you draft it?" the investigator asked. "Our attorney handled the wording," Denise lied. The investigator replied calmly, "The attorney says your board provided the language, including the section that bundles architectural approval with foreclosure consent." The projector screen lit up with a blown-up photo of the form, key sentences highlighted. In the second row, a former homeowner muttered something under his breath. The investigator continued with measured precision. Multiple homeowners report never being told this form could be used to accelerate foreclosure. Some were told it was just a quick approval for paint. The murmuring got louder. The investigator nodded toward me. "Mr. Hale, you lost your home after signing this form. Would you like to speak?" I stood. I did not shout. I did not cry. I just told the story. The fence, the approval, the fake denial, the fines, the foreclosure. I finished with, "I make a living reading fine print now. I know exactly what you did. And I know you did it to others." So I started collecting names. 12 people stood up behind me, one by one. I lost my house over a mailbox height I never knew was wrong. I got fined while I was in chemo. They sold my house while I was in the hospital. They told me I had signed away my right to fight it. On that form. Denise broke. "This is all taken out of context," she snapped with rising panic in her voice. "If people had just complied, we would not have had to go that far. We are protecting property values. We are," the investigator cut in, skimming. "We will get to that." The financials came next. The shell company. The brothers' law firm. The disappearing reserves. Every slide on the projector made the board wilt another inch. Finally, the investigator read the preliminary findings. Abuse of foreclosure process, fraudulent or deceptive documentation, failure to provide proper notice, self-dealing and misappropriation of funds. Denise tried a final stand. "You cannot just come in here and dismantle our HOA," the investigator said firmly. "Oh, we can. And we are." The official decision came 3 months later. Cedar Grove HOA was fined $275,000 by the state, placed under a court-appointed receiver, ordered to repay misappropriated funds to the community, and dissolved as a corporate entity. Denise Caro was banned from serving on any HOA board in the state for life, referred to the district attorney for potential criminal charges related to fraud and self-dealing, and sued in a civil action by multiple former homeowners. She stood in the clubhouse after the announcement, face pale, hands shaking, and said in a voice that had lost all its authority, "This cannot be happening." But it was. Her brother's nice car was gone within a year. The case moved forward, and 18 months later, Denise pleaded guilty to 4 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of embezzlement. She was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $320,000 in restitution. When the judge read the sentence, Denise collapsed into her chair, staring straight ahead with empty eyes, realizing that all her petty power games had finally caught up with her.